Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about toxic relationships. How do you determine whether a relationship is toxic or not, and whether you should separate yourself and sacrifice the relationship? This is today's question. I get this a lot from you guys, and this is something I've contended with in my life. I've had to seriously think and contemplate relationships that were 12 years in length, 20 plus years in length, and really whether I should sacrifice that relationship. And believe me, I've made some hard decisions, and I've had some serious conversations with people, well, friends and in particular, about why it's no good for me to be in this relationship. So that is today's question. Now, the first question is, what is a healthy relationship? So let's define healthy, right? The first thing is that they want the best for you. So they tell you the truth. They tell you, hey, Brad, these are the potholes you're walking into every day. They shine a light on my inadequacies, because you need that, right? Because your map of the world, well, it's never going to be this perfect map of navigation through this thing called life, because life is so unbelievably complicated. We need other human beings around us to help us navigate, to say, hey, maybe you should learn this. Hey, maybe you should avoid this. Maybe that isn't a good idea. Maybe you should stop saying that to people. And then you go, yeah, I know, I should, and you're right, and you need those people. That is so important. So you need to have people around you who have a growth mindset. And that's the next thing of a healthy relationship. That person is, growing on their own terms. They are putting in the work behind the scenes. They are dealing with their baggage and healing from that baggage on their own terms, so that when they are around you, they don't drain your emotional bank account. Because every human being on this planet has an emotional bank account. Now, if you're around somebody who withdraws too much from that bank account, they are a dependent person relying on you as a, dumpster, so that they can unload this and feel good for a moment, but then behind the scenes, they don't improve on themselves, right? They're still running the same patterns, and then the next time they come and see you, they just keep dumping, but they behind the scenes, they're not really solving their own problems. They just keep running in circles over and over and over again. And so when your emotional bank account is depleting over time, here's the thing: you start to develop a resentfulness, a bitterness, a frustration around these people. And when they call you up, all of a sudden you're like, pain. I don't want to talk to this person. I don't want to deal with them. And so now your relationship is just pain, rather than something healthy and vibrant, and something that's good for you, good for your higher self. And so let's get into the big indicators of a toxic relationship. The first indicator is that you're improving, you're making these big life changes, right? You've ran the same patterns for a long time in your life. Now you're sacrificing some stuff to get to a better place. And what happens is that your friend or relative or family member, whoever it is, they change the subject quickly. They don't acknowledge the efforts that you're putting in. They don't support this new way of being for you. Now that's a good indicator of somebody who's maybe they aren't the right person to have around right now. And another sign of a toxic relationship is that they attempt, now this is really big, they attempt to pull you back down to their level. They try and pull you back down to behaviors and habits that you're trying to get out of. I've had people say to me, in my old relationship with my old friend, we were on the same energy field. A lot of people told me, hey Brad, you and your friend, you feed off of each other's energy so well. It's like you're both the same person, right? And what's interesting is that when I started to change and recover from my anxiety, I got the energy field between us, it's separated. And we were no longer on the same energy field. And because of that, I was able to gain more of a perspective over my friend because I wasn't in that loop that, we both shared, right? So when you start to change, and if the person tries to pull you back down, well, this is an indicator that, well, maybe you should separate yourself from them. Now, here's a really an important point. The higher the ideal, the harsher the judge. I'll repeat that. The higher the ideal, the harsher the judge. So you start to improve on yourself, that brings about the inadequacies in the other person you're around. Right? Have you ever been around somebody who's just so bloody successful and you thought to yourself, man, I could just do so much more with my life? And because their success, their disciplines, their sacrifices, that shines a bright light on your inadequacies. So when you start to change and the other people are still in their chaos, they're still in this frustration, and they're still stuck in their destructive, impulsive patterns, well, that change that you're implementing, that will shine a light on them. Now, two things can happen here. This is crucial. The first thing is that, well, they can acknowledge, hey, Brad, tell me about that cold shower, or tell me more about what you're doing to better your mental health. And a sign of a healthy relationship is someone who is curious, someone who asks questions, somebody who starts to, I don't want to say follow, but implement the strategies that you're starting to implement. And they are open to change rather than resistant to the unknown, right? Because you have to go into the unknown to change, right? You have to adopt new behaviors, and you have to start from square one when you adopt these behaviors. And that's a real humility to do that, right? To kind of sacrifice something that has been a part of you, part of the ego, to kill that off and to become a fool at the next thing so that you can become the master later on. And a successful person views themselves as that, right? If I sacrifice that thing now, then maybe the future Brad will greatly improve and get out of whatever this chaos occurring right now, whatever this is. So that's a big indicator of a toxic relationship. They try and pull you back in, and they start to criticize you and judge you harshly. And the judging and the criticizing, that's an unconscious attempt, or it could be conscious, to bring you back into their world, right? And so a sign that they are depleting your emotional bank account is that when they call you on the phone, you see their name and you immediately get a negative reaction. You get an uneasy feeling, or you're unwilling to pick up the call. that's a sign that your emotional bank account regarding your relationship with this person, that's just almost empty at that point, right? Because you understand within you that if you picked up that call, if you met this person, that's going to be a real painful hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, because you have to not only listen to their baggage and be that emotional dumpster for them, but you have to also, you're also attempting to solve their problems at the same time, right? And that causes a lot of emotional energy. Now, there's nothing wrong with helping somebody out. Obviously, being that friend, to be an ear for somebody. But what I'm saying here is that when your emotional bank account is empty, that's an indicator that over a long period of time, they've been nothing but emotional. They've been nothing but drain you emotionally. And you've just been that emotional dumpster for them for a long span of time. And they've always been like that. And they just can't seem to get out of that cycle. Another sign that they have depleted this emotional bank account is that the relationship, it now feels like an obligation rather than something I actually enjoy or look forward to. It just feels like a draining experience. Now, let's get into the two big things that you need to know, in order to sacrifice a relationship. Now, the first thing is that work on yourself first before you try and help someone else. Okay? Because when you work on yourself, you will then start to have a different perspective over the relationships around you. Because if you're on the same wavelength, if you and your family and your partner or your friends are on the same wavelength, and you start to move outside of that wavelength and develop or sacrifice certain habits, you have a different perspective over the relationship at this point. And then you can kind of see whether the relationship is useful or healthy from that perspective. Because at this point, they will either grow with you or they will attempt to bring you back in. Okay? So they might grow with you, right? They might say, "Hey, Brad, I kind of like what you're doing. Can I get some advice or tools? Can I, they're curious, and that's a sign of a healthy relationship. They have a developing mindset. They're curious. They're willing to break past their cycle and pattern and work towards something different, right? And here's the thing: if it's family, if you're like, "Hey, Brad, I'm with my family, and how do I break away from the family that I'm living with?" Well, truth be told, sometimes and usually it's the case that you have to distance yourself from family. Okay? So if you work on yourself first, right, and they remain the same, and they're trying to pull you back in, they're trying to dump all of this stuff onto you, they're trying to cause more pain and suffering in your own life, then really the only option, and you just have to grow a spine at this point, what you really have to do is just distance yourself from them. And that's usually more than not, that's the right option, right? Like, what do you do? They're your family, but if they're not changing, if they're toxic, then the only healthy option is to move away. And if you have to get a job, if you have to move out, then you have to do that. But you have to take care of yourself first before you can seriously consider helping anybody else. And really, if the other person does not want to be helped, do not help them, because you will most likely drown in their chaos. Okay? So that sums up today's video, and I hope that this video has resonated with you. If I missed anything, if I've missed, well, I want your opinion, right? What do you have to say about a healthy relationship? What do you have to say about a toxic relationship? And are you currently contending with that in your life? Please leave your comments below, because I want to read them and I want to hear about it. And lastly, rise above anxiety. I will see you on the next video. Bye for now. Make sure to leave your comments below, subscribe so that you'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video, and rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time.